All right, guys, welcome to Wisdom and Wealth. We are here. I'm excited because I get my old teammate right now, Drew Bledsoe, quarterback for the Patriots, the Cowboys, the Bills, all over the league for a long time. He's got a name, that's for sure. And then post-football, doing some amazing stuff in the wine business, and also just has an awesome family. But we were able to reconnect not too long ago. I actually got to speak at a conference together in San Diego, and it was really neat just to catch back up. But I'm excited to have Drew Bledsoe on board today. So, Drew, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. Fired up to be here and catch up with you a little bit and tell some stories.
Heck yeah. Well, I gotta give you a little intro. What I appreciate about you. So I got to Dallas last 5 games of the 2005 season. And so into the O-line room, and I want to say it might have been the week or the week after I got in is when you invited the whole O-line room to go out to Papa's Brothers Steakhouse for dinner, right? You just said, hey, it's on me. And this was basically my first real introduction into wine at all. And I was trying to figure out, it was good, but I didn't know what the heck I was looking at.
Right.
But I appreciate it because like every time, like you were a vet, I was a rookie in the league, and I don't remember what year this was for you, but it was probably like year 100 or something. And but it was cool because you at least allowed me to come in the room and hang out, and even got to go play poker with you one night, right at Vaquero when you were staying there, and which they totally revamped that place now, but. It was cool because got stay at Whitefish, got to say that's where you're at right now, I think, and you just always been, I guess, at least respected me even as a rookie, and that's something that it left an impact on me. I should say that, right? And then fun fact, I actually am from Washington State. You're from Washington State. Walla Walla, town so nice, I named it twice, right? And but I went to a high school camp with your dad, Mac Bledsoe, when he was at Western Oregon University.
Yes. Yeah, so. You talked. I know we're going to dive into mentors and people we've learned from, but my dad might have his own Mount Rushmore from that standpoint in my life. Mom and dad and the things that they taught me growing up. And still he still owns that spot for me, but he had a huge impact on so many people, man. It was a little bit about football but always a lot more about life, when you were around my old man, in that football setting. He'd teach you some football, but the stuff that really made an impact on me and so many guys that he coached was how to live your life and how to take control of your life and set goals for yourself and hold yourself accountable, and all of those things that Dad taught. So when we start talking mentors, he climbs to the top of that list for me for sure.
That's awesome. Well, shoot, let's start there, man. What's growing up, I guess, what was life like with him or your folks? And
Mom and Dad were both school teachers. Dad was a football coach. We growing up in Walla Walla, I tell people all the time, like, man, we didn't grow up with a bunch of money. My parents were school teachers, but boy, we lived a great life. We had great vacations, but they were in a station wagon, not on an airplane. But Mom and Dad, they taught a lot of lessons, directly both to me and others, growing up. But, as is usually the case, you learn more from their backside than their front side. You learn more from watching what they did and how they lived life, how they treated each other, how they were in the community, and I just, I remember it so clearly, sitting at our dinner table a number of times, and all of a sudden there'd be, some, random high school kid that was having dinner with us. And I never knew why, find out many years later that, they're having dinner with us because things were pretty crappy at home and they needed a place to go and a safe place, but they just come sit at our table and Mom and Dad would take them in and, always expected them to get up and help with the dishes, but they got to come have a nice meal with a good family before they went back to whatever situation wasn't good at home. And I just remember mom and dad always had, huge work ethic. My dad was, he was never home when I woke up. He would go do all his work in the morning. So after football practice, he could come home and have dinner with the family. Just watching things like that from folks growing up, I think built a personal, I don't know, I guess maybe a personal sense of accountability, we're like, all right, cool. I watched my folks do this. I don't have any excuse to not get my work done. Have any excuse to not be a hard worker.
Do you have a specific story like that? I like that. That's pretty cool, bringing some guys home, because felt like, and now I was never in a bad, I want to say poor financial situation, but like, had tough things. I remember coaches like my old wrestling coach, Raul and Sarah, was a short little Greek dude who he used to call me Chorus of all things. I'm like, that's not my name, and so, but I like when my folks divorced and were going through all that stuff, like he was critical for me, because he could tell when I was off, and he would pull me in. But like, was there, and I remember one specific time he pulled me in. It was during winter break. We had wrestling practice, and we'd get at whatever he was saying never made any sense, but like, it was always gibberish. But I knew he cared about me, and he gave a damn. And so I'm like, do you have is there a specific time where you were like, holy cow, like Dad's legit, or maybe even like today with your family, where you look back, you're like, man, I'm thankful for that, that he walked?
Sure. Well, two things that Dad, in a very direct sense that I learned from him. One was how to set goals, and started, from a pretty young age. I don't know, maybe late grade school, certainly middle school. Would sit down and write out goals I had for myself, and they were private. I didn't post them on the wall or any of that stuff, but they were very specific goals about who I was going to be and how I was going to do things. It wasn't necessarily, I don't know, one of the important things was he always reminded all of us to set goals for things that we could control. So, set out to get a college scholarship, because you don't get to make that decision, to decide, if you just got to say, I'm going to have a college scholarship, then everybody would have one, right? But it was things more specific, like I'm a hard worker. I am coachable. I work hard at my schoolwork. Things that I could actually control, that were within my control. And so those were very specific, and those stay with me to this day. And then the other thing that Dad actually, like in a direct sense, taught me. I actually took a public speaking class from him in high school. And, little did I know that, in my professional life, both in football and in wine, I was going to be talking in public a whole bunch. So that was really helpful, but it was really helpful, not just from getting over the fear of speaking in public, but in learning how to quickly and concisely organize your thoughts. We've all been around lots of different public speakers, and you see some people get up and they don't know how to put a period at the end of the sentence. They just keep going, and they ramble and so on. And so Dad was very, he taught all of us, and myself included, how to organize our thoughts so that we could present things in a concise way.
Now, are you a Jordan Peterson fan then?
I've listened to Jordan some, not a ton. Just kind of little tidbits on social media and so on. So I can't say that I'm not a huge fan, but I liked the stuff that I've heard from him.
See, he's very good. He's a clinical psychologist out of Canada, and got in some hot water because he considered himself more left leaning, but because the left's gone crazy, he's been outspoken about them trying to bring authority over speech, or some crazy outlandish types of law that they're looking at implementing. But he's one of the coolest things I love about him is starting in your own home, right? And he goes, if you can't, he goes, I would warn anybody who's trying to clean up the world who doesn't have their own house in order. And part of ordering that house is being able to formulate your thoughts to a point where you can articulate exactly what you want to say in an effective manner, right? Exactly what your dad is teaching you. And that hasn't been one thing that I've seen play out in my life really well. It's that. It's people don't know how to think. They don't know how to collect thoughts and put them together and then articulate them or put them on paper. And that's one thing I'm super thankful for, is that weapon right there.
Oh, for sure. And, one thing, when you think about how people interact with each other, and you get into the debate about this, that, or the other thing, the most important skill, I think, that you can develop from that standpoint is how to actually actively and truthfully listen, right? Because so many times we get into a discussion about whatever it is, and rather than actually really digesting what the other person is saying, you're thinking about what you're going to say next. Oh, this is my argument, so you're not actually. And so one of the things that actually has become important to me in having discussions about complex or controversial things is a lot of times I won't have something to say in the moment, because I actually really try to listen and digest what the other person is saying. And oftentimes what that means is that, I won't pick up the conversation for another day, or a week later or whatever, because, when you talk about just respecting your fellow human, one of the purest forms of respect you can give somebody is actually listen to what they have to say, rather than, hear them with the intent of, rebutting with what your opinion is. And think, oh, okay, let me actually digest that. Let me listen to this, and then maybe tomorrow or later on maybe have a response. But that's a skill that I've really tried to continue to practice. Particularly, I've had the great privilege of being around some very thoughtful, interesting, and influential people, and you get in one of those rooms, man, throw some questions out and then just sit back and listen, and it's amazing. It's amazing what you can learn if you just take the time to really focus and listen to what somebody's saying.
Well, I love that. That's the whole purpose of this podcast, right? That's the whole purpose of this show is that I had it's just and that's actually another Jordan Peters thing. Is now it's kind of a lesson driven off cast not pearls amongst swine, right? Basically, if someone's not listening to you, stop talking. Right. And they'll tell you exactly what they're up to. But that has been some of the best things, I think, and we talk about this even in the office, is knowing when to shut up. So yes. It's like you share a story that reminds me of a story, and my impulse or my flesh is to immediately jump on top of it and tell you my version or whatever that is, which is not necessarily bad, but it's still not letting you finish the thought that you had in the first place.
Yeah. No, it's totally true. Totally true. It's funny. I don't know. We had my brother and I had some laughs because there was when during COVID, when everybody was locked up, I think people in some cases lost the art of conversation. I remember I'll see get back together with people and they've been dying to talk to somebody for so long and been living with their own family and their own thoughts and all this stuff. So you get in, you're like, oh wow, okay, yeah, this person's been talking for 15 straight minutes, and but kind of have to give them the grace to acknowledge that, oh man, they've been locked up with their own thoughts for a long time, so they've been waiting to express themselves. But I just thought it was kind of funny coming out of that to be around people that lost the art, and then hopefully it's coming back around. But yeah, but one of the things I think that I know you've found in your business, and I certainly have found in my business, is how directly our experience as athletes and football players and team members, how directly all of those qualities that allowed us to be good at ball, how directly they translate into business. That just, you think about teamwork and culture, and we both were around teams that were successful, and then I certainly was around some teams that were not as successful. And man, you go back and look at it, and even above talent, the culture of the good teams was what drove that, and getting everybody pulling in the same direction, and putting the team ahead of themselves. Just that it becomes greater than just the sum of the parts, right? But you think about the adversity that we have to deal with, as athletes, and that comes to everybody. Whether you stop playing in Little League or whether you get to go on and be a professional athlete, sports brings adversity, and you learn how to deal with that and learn how to embrace adversity and take pride in working through something that's really hard. You learn the value of planning, and you plan incessantly, with football, whether that's off season, whether that's, going into the season, or whether that's specific game plans or even halftime adjustments. You're just always planning. And you got to be able to execute with precision and discipline. You learn the value of self-sacrifice and putting the team ahead of self, and just, all those lessons that we learned in sports translate so directly to not just business, but to life.
We'll talk about that. So, like, this is, I'm sure similar for you. Like, coming out of football for me was like, and I don't know how much to what degree for you it was similar, but coming out of football to me, I get hurt in Miami. I feel like I have unfinished business. Every intent on coming back to the game. And then obviously it's a reality check when your family that you feel you have doesn't really need you anymore. And so, and I don't know it in the time, but that's where I think God kind of brought it back, like, hey, I'm trying to make a husband and not a football player at that point. And, but how did you talk through that transition? Like, this is like, was there a low? Where did you even find yourself even? And maybe I think you started some businesses when you were playing still, but the segue was even taking place in your mind. But like, walk through that in your head. Like, how did that go? And then how did that transition? Like, what was the low and what was the high that came from those?
Yeah, I had the great privilege, being able to choose to retire. There were other opportunities to keep playing. But, for me, we started to put together a plan for this wine business we were going to build. And so when I made the decision to step away from football, it wasn't because I didn't like football. I love football, and I always will. But I was ready to go do the next thing. And, I think having that next thing that was important, that was difficult, that was complicated, that that made that decision a lot easier for me. And then leaving ball still was hard. I remember being up here in Montana, and that first morning when would have been reporting to training camp. I got up early, grabbed a cup of coffee, went and sat out on the pontoon boat, watched the sun come up, and I just cried. Just sat there and just big, tears running down my face. Not necessarily. I wasn't sad that I wasn't playing. That was a decision I made, and I didn't regret that. But it was the end of an era, and it was a landmark in time when things were going to be different. Then got up, went on with my day, and it was all good. But in that moment, it was like, okay, yeah, we're really stepping away from this, and I was okay letting it go. And I think that's as you watch different people go through transitions, whether that's high school kids or adults going through whatever they're going through in their life. I've always found it important to, at least in your own mind, memorialize those changes, and recognize, when there's a big change coming, rather than fight it or deny it, or just try to push through it. You're like, okay, wait, yeah, okay, this is a big change, and maybe it's a change that sucks. Maybe it's a really positive change, but whatever that is, it's important to just take a few moments, honestly, and recognize, okay, this change happened and things are going to be different now. And memorialize those things in your mind rather than just keep pushing on and pretending like, nothing happened. I think it's important to put, personal, just in your own brain, landmarks around these big transitions in life.
That's good. I feel that when you saying that, because I can picture you on the boat, like having, coffee's like a staple for me now, but like, that's like my favorite thing is outside on the boat by the fire, coffee, something. And so like when you're in that setting, I could just see you, I could feel that. So
yeah. I also had some fun with it. I had an email chain with a lot of my buddies that were still playing, and I would send them one picture every day of what I was doing out there. So the first one was just a picture of my feet in the water in the lake holding a beer while they're slaving away, and then the next one I'm on my motorcycle, the next one I'm playing golf, the next one I'm downtown having lunch with my wife, and they weren't very happy with me, but I loved it. Like, hey, how's camp? How's 2 days? Yeah, I'm going water skiing. So I had some fun with it as well. But I think for me the when you talk about the lows, one of the hardest parts was when we start the wine business. I mean, it's 3 years before you have any wine to sell. It's a long time. So there was like essentially this probably full 2-year period after I retired, before that business was really becoming a business, where I didn't feel like I was accomplishing anything. We've always been so goal oriented and driven, and there was just a long waiting period in between starting the business and actually having a business, while we're just waiting for grapes to grow. And I remember, being up here in Montana, which has always been our sanctuary. It was always the sanctuary after football season to come up here and just really completely decompress. And I was always really good at just unwinding when we came here. I would come up and I would shut everything off. I wouldn't do anything. My agent knew not to call me. I wasn't leaving. I wasn't moving. And he called a couple of times with some pretty good offers. Like, yeah, no, sorry, I'm here. I'm not moving. But I remember, in that 2-year period before things really started to go, kind of struggling when I was here because I didn't feel like I'd earned it. And, I was up here and I'm like hanging out on the lake, but that was always something I felt like I had earned, by, playing ball and dealing with all that went into that. And got up here like, wow, it didn't feel the same for a little while because I didn't feel like I'd earned the right to totally decompress. And so it was I wouldn't say it was necessarily a low time, but it was a time where I just didn't feel like myself for a bit. Then once that business got rolling, now I'm on the road a ton, helping guide and lead the business, and it's 70 employees now. So I mean, it's a real thing, it occupies a lot of my time, a lot of my brain space. So now when I come up here, I feel good about it again. Like, all right, I earned the right to just sit on the dock with my feet in the water for a day or two. But when you're wired to be successful and you're driven and all of those things, if that piece goes away, it can leave you feeling a little lost. It's funny, being the age that I am now, starting to see some friends and peers that are, kind of moving into retirement in pretty successful ways. And there's been 3 or 4 of them that retired and then like 6, 9, 12 months later, all of a sudden they've got a job again.
Yeah.
Just like, it's like, live their whole lives building and growing and doing things, and then putting their feet up and playing golf 5 days a week, they start to go stir crazy. One dude's super successful, retired with a bunch of money, and went back and was a CFO for like a little tiny company in Portland, Oregon. Doesn't need another dollar in his life, but he needed something to do. Otherwise, he was going to go crazy.
I think that speaks to, especially us as men, like we're on mission, right? And so, and I think that speaks to your, like when you're talking about, like you didn't earn it, which is kind of funny because 2 things I thought about there. One is, starting the business takes a while to see that fruit, where football or sports is like mowing the lawn. I see the fruit right away. I see the work that's done, right? Good or bad. And where business, it takes a little bit, like, planting grapes, wine. That takes, especially that type of business, takes a long time. Alicia Mondavi, who I'm excited, we're going to have her on at some point, but she's part of the Mondavi family wine. Got to hear her present on her Mondavi sisters, and she goes, in a competitive world, she goes, where so many people are getting into it. She was funny. She goes, I always tell people, if you want to make a small fortune in the wine business, you got to start with a big one first. And so, but so like for that time period, so it feels like almost you didn't earn anything because you haven't seen like full fruit of it yet, right? Mm-hmm. When you could be doing all the right things technically and just haven't seen it. But so I love hearing that, like, all right, you get some time to actually enjoy that. Right. But that performance, but then the second part of that is, we see that in the business for sure. Well, somebody sells a business, makes a big check, and decides they want to retire at 52. And 6 months later, they're like, all right, I'm fat. I'm tired of all this. I'm like, I need to have something to do. And when really, that's what it speaks, especially us. We're supposed to be on mission. We're leading, we're charging, we're getting things done. And so, because it's also a recipe for disaster if we go the other way. Tell me this. We're kind of out of time here, but this is what, man, I love this. This is awesome. But give me something that you're doing in the business right now that if you look back 5 or 10 years ago and saw younger you getting into this, you're like, this is a no-brainer. I should have been doing this 10 years ago. Like, what's something you're doing now? That's huge.
Probably the most transitional thing that we've done in the business over the last 4 or 5 years that's really allowed us to be where we are is that we got very intentional about culture, and set out. It actually probably was about 5 years ago, and at that point we had like six total team members, and like I said, now we're at 70, and we saw this growth coming. We're like, all right, we better get serious about defining what our culture is as a company and put that together so that as the company grows, we can, you can onboard somebody in a short amount of time, at least understanding what we're about. And it was a cool process then. It's ongoing now, but we sat down and with the entire team, not just me and Josh, our winemaker CEO, but with our entire leadership team, sat down and wrote down our company values. Josh and I, the only thing that the two of us did without input from the rest of the leadership team was define our mission statement. And the interesting thing about our mission statement is it doesn't have the word wine in it. Our mission is to create genuine happiness for our customers and ourselves. And now that wine is the engine for that, but it's pretty informative for our team and for people that come in. They're like, oh yeah, we're not making wine. We're trying to create happiness. And the ourselves part, that was one that Josh added in, because he's like, all right, well, if we're going to do this, we better, be making ourselves happy too. Otherwise, what's the point, right? And then one of the things that I've remind the team all the time is that happiness and fun are not synonymous. Sometimes the happiest moments in our lives are when we've done something really hard. We've done something really difficult. And again, that ties back to sports, right? It's like, shit, don't sit around on the porch and, tell our grandkids when we're old about the games we won 50-0. No, we tell them about games we were behind in the fourth quarter. We tell them about seasons we lost a couple games in a row. And those are the moments that give you the most personal satisfaction, are the hard ones, not the easy ones. So I remind the team that all the time, like, yeah, all right, sometimes you have to embrace the suck of a really hard time to get through the other side. But when you do, that personal fulfillment that comes from doing something hard is pretty important.
That's, I love that. Kind of reminds me, one of the pieces of wisdom that I took a hold of at one point was what you get out of this life is determined by how much responsibility you're willing to take on.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like during those hard times and I remember clearly one time when I left Miami, I got into a fight with my coach. The next day I got hurt in a Thursday night game against Chicago. And I remember clearly at one point, I was sitting here, I don't know if I was like praying or just thinking about it. You kind of sit there and go over like fights that you had in the past, like, and to get yourself riled up. And I remember, I don't know whose voice it came into my head, but it said, "You did nothing to help." And I remember thinking back, like, I didn't care about the coach or the situation or whatever. But I'm like, I got to look back. I'm like, yeah, I did nothing at that point. And so now it's like, all right, we come into these hard times. What are you going to do about it? And it's like, whether it's your fault or not, right? It's like, all right, what are you going to do about it? And that's how cool is that to like rally people at that point?
It is. It's super cool. We talk about embracing adversity, and we've every time we've had adversity in our company, we've come out the other side as a better company. And so when something goes sideways, and just like right now in this moment, the wine business is a hard business. Inflation, everything costs more. Competition, there's oversupply. There's lots of stuff going on. So it's as an industry, we've got headwinds really for the first time since we got into the business. And our team has just rallied and they're kicking ass. Our competitive set is down 10 to 30% year over year, and we're up year over year. But they've had to, as a team, really rally. And they're like, all right, look, we're making great wine. Cool, that's great. We've got a beautiful facility and all this stuff. That's all great. But there's lots of that kind of stuff out there. There's lots of beautiful spots. What are we going to do to separate? And how are we going to continue to separate on a daily basis? And they've been creative and intentional in doing that, making sure that they're reaching out in a very personal way to as many customers as they can, and really going the extra step in every way to make sure that we're delivering. But it's just been cool to watch the team step up and respond in a relatively difficult time for the industry.
That's awesome. I love that. And we'll wrap up, but man, I just think that's so cool, because it's like we hit tough times in the league, right? Or we hit tough times. I said in our business. Mm-hmm. I love that. We had you get so many people. I get a lot of questions, especially if like there's a down market, and they were like, "Are you getting your people beating you up?" I'm like, "No," because I've set the expectation with them ahead of time, right? And by the way, I love bad markets because people in my business flounder and run. And they hide. And like, what does that do? That flushes out the weak and it improves the strong. So I love those people. So it's like, okay, now those few people are left. I'm going to go see Drew is my standing competition now. I'm going to go see what he's doing right, and which is actually a Sam Walton lesson, right? So that was a Walmart lesson made in America that was really good. It was like go into your competition, see what they're doing well, and take that. Well, dude, man, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely, Cory. Always good to catch up, man. I'll have to check out some of the. Sounds like you got some interesting guests coming on for this thing, so I'll check it out. Heck yeah, you got it. No, Alicia's going to come on. We got some other people, so thankful to you. You're the man. Go take care of your family. Give us some love from us. Will do, man. Keep in touch, buddy. All right. Thanks, Drew.